We are receiving reports that Colony Europa 7 has in fact been destroyed by an
The estimated death toll is in the billions.
My entire family was... The attackers are being called Gamma Aliens until more information
With this attack, we have no choice but to protect our kind by unleashing our almighty weapon upon them, summoning the apocalypse.
Yep, you were just watching pieces of a trailer for a game rated 6 years and up. Now I went to PDXCon in 2019 where I met the developers, where I got this amazing mug and this little fella, and let me tell you, they are very much aware of that fact. To address that, after releasing Apocalypse, the expansion the trailer you were watching is for, which allowed you to literally destroy entire planets, they released Nemesis, an expansion that allows you to kill literally every living being in the entire galaxy. Huh. So as you can probably guess, Stellaris games have a bit of a tendency to result in slight amounts of tomfoolery. But what exactly is Stellaris? Stellaris is a space-age 4X real-time strategy game developed by Paradox Interactive, makers of, among other things, Hearts of Iron, Europa Universalis, Victoria and City Skylines. So they know a thing or two about making strategy games. Stellaris is one of those games where you start playing after coming home, and once you get the idea to check the time, the sun has already risen and it is 5 AM on the next day. As Martin Pants would put it, Stellaris is basically a blank sci-fi canvas for you to sprinkle whatever you want on it. You can roleplay as your favorite sci-fi series, make friends, make profits, meet your maker, or... There are basically an infinite amount of ways to play this game. And for that you get basically an infinite amount of ways of customizing your player empire, so plan at least 2 hours for empire creation for every playthrough. On our quest for galactic domination, I will be joined by my friends Matthew, Seku and Sergio. Now this is where we kind of had to lower our expectations somewhat, because Sergio's PC is a piece of crap, and the game only runs as fast as the slowest PC in the entire lobby. That means that we could only use smaller galaxies, had to turn off some specifically performance-heavy features such as xenocompatibility, and also had to optimize our settings somewhat to make the game not last as long, since the more pops your empire has over time, the slower the game runs. And I had been through one Sergio-induced late game that took 20 real-time seconds to calculate a single in-game day too many to tolerate it ever again. So sadly, we won't be playing on a 1000-star galaxy, but a 400, which means there will be less conquering. But that also means that it will be a lot easier for us, and faster, to win the game, by whatever means necessary. Now before we launch ourselves into the great beyond, I should talk about my strategy for long-term growth and stability for all people of the galaxy. Which means it's time for an overview of my empire. I will be playing as the Starfish Coalition. Don't be fooled by their cute appearance. This empire is optimized to do one single thing extremely well: Tech Rush. My preferred way of playing Stellaris. It is trying to get the absolute highest research output possible early on in the game to pull ahead of everyone else with technologies that improve my economy, military, and you guessed it, improve my research even more, leading to a very strong snowball effect hopefully early on in the game. The end goal is to reach all the endgame technologies first, and then use them to comfortably establish myself as a leading empire of the galaxy through sheer force of my unlimited amounts of stat bonus research and the employment of late game tech while everyone else is still stuck in the mid game. We have species traits that improve overall research by 10%, engineering research by another 15%, and mineral output by 15%. A frozen category homeworld and planet preference, these planet types spawn with more minerals on average, to make them sweet alloys for my fleet. The mechanist origin trait, which gives me robot technology right from the start, more on that later. Fanatic materialist government ethic for another plus 10% research speed and reduced robot upkeep. And also militarist, because I had an ethics point left over and a stronger fleet can never hurt. My authority is also oligarchic. Oligarchy? Whatever, it gives me more unity. I also picked the mining guilds and technocracy civics, continuing the trend of if it can improve my research and resource output, I will take it.
No great advance is made without great sacrifice.
This guy gets the idea. So here we are, 4 brave shitposters versus the rest of the galaxy. Me just as described, Matt with his goblin basement dwellers, and Seku and Sergio as robots. because they're kinda new to the game and they like abusing the fucked balancing. We got all our settings dialed in and pressed start. And here we are. Our home star system and planet, a small, pathetic military fleet, a civilization that has just discovered faster than light travel, and great ambitions. I immediately went out to the galaxy map to see where the game had spawned me, since just the day before I had received the biggest and baddest starting position L in my whole Stellaris career. Today though, it looked alright. Not amazing, but at least I had some planets nearby. My hyperlanes though looked a bit concerning, with one single faraway choke point determining my access to the rest of the galaxy. This is good for making my home system hard to invade, but also bad because you can cut off from expanding very easily by someone else claiming that joint point before you do.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
But first, I was going to have to survey my neighboring systems, so I sent my science ship out into the unknown to discover what lies beyond the reaches of our home system. Among the usual starter anomalies, I quickly found my precursor species. In every playthrough of Stellaris, your empire will always have a precursor empire that once inhabited the space that you inhabit now to research. Which one it is will be random, and I rolled the Erasians. Not the best one in my opinion, but still a pretty good one, because it will give me a very good planet by the time I fully research them. I also found an archaeological site that might give me a planet I could terraform one day, which is nice but not that special. And then I realized, oh no, that choke point I was panicking about? It wasn't actually a choke point. The actual choke point that connects me to the rest of the galaxy was way further up. And as luck would have it, once I reached the choke point system, I encountered someone who has already made their home in it. Now these were just mining drones, not an actual alien empire, but these little ancient borders were preventing me from expanding until I have a fleet that can deal with them. Which in the very early game is not super easy to get. And then, for good measure, my game crashed. Yep, that happened. But hope wasn't completely lost. In one of my other claim system, I had found a wormhole. It didn't do much for me in its current state, as I have to research wormhole stabilization first before I can travel through it, but it was a possible way out should someone else use my setback to claim all the systems behind my blocked up choke point. I did eventually build a fleet to defeat the mining drones in the choke point system, but quickly discovered that it wouldn't end there, as the two systems it connects to were also blocked by hostile space creatures. Not mining drones this time, but angry space crystals. One of the two systems was even their home system, with a rather sizable defense fleet around it. This is a nut that I would not be able to crack in a whole while. But then, when I needed it the most, it happened. By random chance, I had gotten wormhole travel extremely early, and I was not going to let that chance go. Soon after, my science ship was ready to travel through the wormhole and discover where it leads to. The answer was about 6 jumps south of me, which isn't a huge distance, but crucially, it might enable me to claim the systems on the other side of my blocked off area. But then, I encountered an alien spaceship. The system I landed in wasn't claimed by anyone, but a short first contact event later, I found out that the system next to it was, by the bird people. So I quickly rushed a construction ship down through the wormhole to claim that system and stop them from expanding into my direction. My plan was successful. Things were looking up for me, but then I discovered Seku, who as it turned out claimed most of the systems between my main area and the wormhole. We did however agree to work together, and he even left some planets uncolonized for me to claim for myself, which was very nice of him. Just for me to find out that those planets were right next door to a spiritualist fallen empire. Now, spiritualist empires hate machines, which is a bit of a bummer, but in general Stellaris terms not a huge problem. But fallen empires, those are a problem. Fallen empires are ancient civilizations that have achieved and seen everything there is to see in the universe, so they thought to themselves, hey, let's chill a bit. And so they retreated into their core space and left the rest of the galaxy to the younger races. Us. They don't really have any interest in anyone else for the most part, unless you piss them off. Kinda like those old people who watch and judge you silently from afar, except that they are armed with a state-of-the-art military arsenal ready to blow you to smithereens the second you stray too close to their lawn. So, Seku playing as a machine intelligence, the one thing in the universe that they hate the most, likely saw the brewing apocalypse and stayed away from their borders, which is how I ended up with those planets. But here is the problem. I may be a regular empire with regular biological people, but I was planning to eventually go down the synthetic ascension path, which turns all of my people into machines just like Seku. But that was late game stuff, and until then I would have a fleet capable of quickly dispatching a fallen empire should they decide they don't like the idea of my continued existence anymore. Meanwhile, me discovering Seku and the bird people caused me to pick up on more and more communications until I eventually found myself as part of the galactic community. This is where a running joke within the Stellaris community usually finds its start. The completely broken galactic senate system. In a single player, by the late game you are usually expected to have enough diplomatic weight to overrule literally everyone else, even if they all vote against you. You may say that in a way you can, become the Senate. For now, that was far away though, and the most powerful empire in the Galactic Senate was actually one of the AIs, which slightly hurt my feelings. Next up, however, was some comedy. The home planet of the bird people from earlier had decided it doesn't exist anymore and it randomly exploded. This actually was the result of their civilization having the Doomsday origin, which does exactly that. But it was still quite funny to see that the first cracked world in the playthrough wasn't actually my fault this time. But of course, things would not stay that way. In the meantime, I had found another wormhole in Seku's territory. On the other side was a habitable planet, so I thought, hey, why not, and claimed the system, even though it was on the other side of the galaxy and completely exposed, basically guaranteeing it would fall if I ever get into a war in that area during the mid-game. This gamble actually worked out quite well for me, as it turned out. And then, I got battleship research. My plans for tech rushing to galactic dominance were going quite well. But once the game sensed my satisfaction with myself, it of course decided that it would be quite funny if one of the AIs would claim system between the wormhole system I claimed and another planet right next to it and then immediately close borders, preventing me from colonizing. Ugh. But I had a plan. I can upgrade the outpost in that system to have a shipyard in it, and in that shipyard I can make a colony ship. So I would have my planet after all. And yes, you still get resources, even though there's technically no way to transport them to you. Then, while looking at the very imposing fleets of the Fallen Empire, we found this. By now, my battleship research had finished, and 2 mighty battleships had finished construction. I, of course, named the Bismarck and Tirpitz. I am sure both of these ships will have a long-lasting and successful career in the Starfish Coalition Navy. My new fleet now had reached a strength of about 20,000. Which is enough to finally clear out those 2 blocked off systems that had halted my expansion earlier. So I sent in the fleet, led by my 2 new battleships, to lay waste to the indigenous population. After that point, things calmed down for a little bit. I finished claiming all those systems I couldn't before, kept building my fleet and technology, and witnessed an alien empire undergo spontaneous dissolvement at the hands of their enemies that they rebelled against. And then, thanks to my strong research production, I had everything to adopt the Synthetics Ascension perk and Tradition Tree. The people of the Starfish Coalition would finally join their machine brothers and sisters in immortality. But, someone is upset. Though I knew this was going to happen, and to be honest, I didn't think the Fallen Empire would do much except throw me a strongly worded letter. As it turned out, that wouldn't be the case. Before my unfortunate realization, I had researched orbital rings. These things are quite honestly overpowered. They are cheap to make, can be built around every single planet you own, and have buildings on them that can drastically increase the planet's resource production at the cost of higher upkeep. Basically, these things are a must-have for an empire planning to build a lot of ships. But then, that thing happened. The Fallen Empire decided that all of my people collectively deciding to get themselves hacked apart into pieces and have their minds transferred into superior machine bodies was unacceptable. And it was time for some smacking. They actually declared war on me. Thankfully, when a Fallen Empire declares war, their war goal is just to humiliate you and maybe behead your president instead of annexing or destroying any planets or systems you have. But let me tell you, their 300,000 plus fleet rolling down on my by now strong, but still very much inferior military was not fun. So I decided to not even attempt to fight them after they invaded 2 of my planets, and I just surrendered. So they left me alone. Not without beheading my president and humiliating him in front of the galaxy, however, which is an actual debuff in the game. It was not fun. After the smacking incident, I focused on getting a science nexus built. Now this wasn't just to keep boosting my technology production again. If I fully complete this megastructure, I would also gain access to the Galactic Wonders Ascension perk, which unlocks the big lads, the units, the overall best and strongest megastructures in the game, the Matter Decompressor, the Dyson Sphere, and the Ringworld. Getting all 3 of these was immensely important for my tech rush end goals, since a research-focused Ringworld is just plain stupid, and the other megastructures basically just exist to fuel said Ringworld's research lab upkeep. By this point, my fleets had grown quite a bit once again, and I had even researched and activated the Colossus project, the literal planet killer of Stellaris. I wasn't planning on using it anytime soon, but it was good to have in case I needed it. Also works great as a big fuck off or you'll regret it sign to everyone else. Surely, my empire was now secure from outside threats. The war with the Fallen Empire had left me without enough energy to upkeep my fleets, so I decided that rather than going bankrupt, I would build a Dyson Sphere first. I had just finished the mainframe when Oh no. Right on cue, the Fallen Empire had decided that slapping me in the face once wasn't enough, and they wanted a rematch. But since they did this the last time, my fleet power had basically doubled. So this time, I decided to not let myself be humiliated by some old stinky rope-wearing spiritualists. So I sent in the boys, and this time, with my combined firepower, I invaded them, going as far as capturing their home system and destroying one of their fleets. Surely now, I will have my revenge. As it turns out, I had underestimated just how powerful their main fleet was. Fallen Empires usually punch above their weight, so 100,000 fleet power of theirs is more equal to 200,000 fleet power of a regular empire. My victory over their secondary fleet was a good sign, however I only barely matched the firepower of their main fleet with all three of mine, so I got destroyed and lost all of my fleets. Humiliated again, and with my president having received another instant weight loss therapy, I had once again lost the war. But wars against fallen empires are one thing. Soon after, I would get a chance to prove my strength against a regular empire. Seko had started a war with the bird people and had invited me as an attacker. Now I still felt a bit annoyed about losing 2 wars and winning none, so I wanted to make sure I'm gonna get my well-deserved dopamine rush for this one. So I brought my Colossus. The tiny, silly birds were no match, and billions of innocent civilians were sacrificed. For the funny. Territory was claimed, and my ego had been satisfied. But it wouldn't end there. My empire had now reached the endgame tech stage, where I had researched most technologies and now began to transition to automatic stat-boosting research, which meant I had just gotten a massive power boost. And what would you know? They were back. Still feeling cocky, the Fallen Empire had declared war on me for a 3rd time. But here's the thing, my fleets were back up to full strength. Actually, I now had 1 more fleet than before. And the Fallen Empire, crucially, can't replace lost ships. They only have what they have, with the only option being to repair ships with low health. All of this means that despite a relatively short amount of time passing, my chances of victory had just gone up significantly. My power was up, theirs was down, and even better, they now only had a single fleet. If I could force them into one decisive battle and destroy it, I would win. I would even have free reign to bombard, invade, and annex their planets. So in went the fleets. I once again made some progress, even recaptured their home system again, but I didn't want to send any ground troop ships to invade their planets with their fleet still around causing trouble. As it turned out, they elected to actually ignore my advances into their territory and just keep going for my planets instead. Something that I was willing to tolerate for a while, since most of my good planets were far, far away from them, but when I saw that they were not going to stop, I had to do something about it. But not before Seko accidentally declared war on basically the entire galaxy when he forgot to check who was all in a federation with the guy he wanted to attack. As it turned out, it was all the AIs except for 2. In other words, the Fallen Empire was not the only one to receive some smacking today. But back to my own efforts. I had indeed realized that the Fallen Empire fleet was not going to stop capturing my systems, and so I had to redeploy my fleets to engage them. So I faced off against a fleet that had once destroyed me once again. But having fought many of my space stations and being far outside their home territory, facing my newly improved fleets, the rematch was not going to go out like our first meeting. In the following battle, the Fallen Empire's fleet was completely destroyed. Not only that, but it left behind some valuable debris that I could research and get normally unattainable Fallen Empire tech tier ship components. So I sent a science ship to analyze the debris, a fleet and army ships towards the home system, and several smaller fleet groups to take the rest of their now barely defended star systems. This was going to be a total victory. It was here where I also realized something rather ironic. Having completed the synthetic ascension path, all my people were now machines, and any organic props I would receive would also immediately be turned into more robot people. So in the end, the Fallen Empire's constant fighting without their hate just turned them into that one very thing. But first, I would have to actually conquer them properly. I would have to send a strong army to every single planet they own and take it in order to actually annex their systems. And this is where a problem appeared. When their fleet was rampaging up and down my own home territory, I had gained lots and lots of war exhaustion. And now I had gained just enough to reach high war exhaustion. This was a problem because it allowed the Fallen Empire to force me to make peace with them within 24 months after I reach high war exhaustion. 24 months is not a lot of time to invade and conquer 5 or so planets with several systems between each other. So I had to take some desperate measures. You see, the only Fallen Empire planets really worth keeping are the ones in their home system. The rest kinda suck, so it's not a huge loss not to get them. And with time not on my side, I decided that if I can have them, then they shouldn't either. So I got my Colossus, Another did to dispose of the remaining planets while I finished up invading the rest. In the end, no planets were cracked, however. I had just about finished to invade all of their planets with literally about 10 days left until I would have been forced to settle status quo and leave them all the planets that I hadn't invaded by that point. But by sheer force of will and technology, I had defeated one of the strongest and most ancient empires of the galaxy, and their home planets full of shiny Fallen Empire tech were now mine. Additionally, before their end, the Fallen Empire had owned a black hole, a specific type of system needed for constructing a matter decompressor. I didn't have a black hole until then, so I started construction on my next high-end megastructure. Meanwhile, in the southern corner of the galaxy, Matthew had gotten himself all the L-gate insights to open the L cluster, a part outside of the galaxy that is only accessible by set gateways. And every time you open the L cluster, a random event will happen. Those can range from very good to neutral to very bad. In our case, nothing really happened, so could have been worse. Back home, I had now begun assimilating the Fallen Empire population into my empire, and strangely, they had very little objections to being systematically converted into synthetic beings. I expected at least one attempt at a rebellion, but there was just nothing. So they actually became rather productive citizens of the Starfish Coalition. After that, I had made a horrifying discovery. I can't insult Matthew. What a tragedy. I then went through my policies and found out that some sort of purge was actually allowed in my empire. I, of course, immediately changed that policy to outlaw purge. I mean, we're the good guys here. We don't needlessly kill people. I then built a few more megastructures, a mega shipyard, a mega art installation, and finally, I started construction of my ring world. I then misread Sequo's empire name, and then all of us formed a federation. This federation was a research cooperative, which again boosted my research production even more in anticipation of my soon-to-be ring world. Now unified in a federation and with relative stability through our four empires, we came up with a devious plan. You see, the spiritualists weren't the only fallen empire in the galaxy. Down south, between Matthew and Sergio, was another one. This fallen empire was xenophobe, basically like spiritualists, except that they hate everyone regardless of whether they are machines or organic, so naturally we all decided to stop them from ever becoming a problem. And so we all took our fleets and amassed them just outside their borders, ready for an invasion. This time, we would be the ones to declare war instead of them, which means that the war goal was not humiliation. Given my possession of a Colossus, the only option was total war. A fight to the death, to go in, only one comes out. But with 4-player empires attacking from different sides, the outcome was pretty much set in stone. Our fleets rolled in, our colossi fired their weapons, and the fallen empire was defeated. At this point, we had disposed of the 2 most powerful empires in the galaxy, and with our federation, we had pretty much become the de facto rulers of the galaxy. But there was one more thing that could stop us. And it was going to happen without warning when none of us were expecting it. We were already planning our next assault on the AI empire west of Matthew when an event popped up. The Unbidden. One of the 3 Endgame Crisis events had spawned. The Endgame Crisis is exactly what the name implies, a massive armada taking the galaxy by storm. Something that only the most powerful empires even have a hope of winning again. But we are forgetting something here. Because 2 of us are pretty new to the game, we had essentially been playing the game on easy mode. And when I adjusted the settings for our playthrough to be faster than usual, I forgot to account for the fact that we would be a lot more powerful a lot sooner than we would usually be, so I had put the endgame crisis strength way too low to ever be a threat, and they just got destroyed instantly. Whoops. We had just overcome the last big hurdle in the game. There's only one thing left for us to do now. To actually, officially win the game. The one thing that remains is to conquer all the AIs. Now all except 2 of the AIs had entered into one big federation with each other, which means we would be fighting all of them at the same time, but we decided it would probably be the best if we take out the 2 non-allied AIs first, then use their resources for the final war. While the preparations for that were underway, my archaeology projects concluded and 3 of my planets were now completely encased in one giant city. These 3 planets would now be even better at making alloys, enabling me to support an even bigger military. My economy was now strong enough for me to completely disregard my fleet capacity limit, and now the upkeep penalties associated with going above it. But here we reached the point where some of us were getting kinda tired. We had played Stellaris for a good 5 hours without stopping. Since some of us actually do have a real life and were not on vacation like myself, we actually had to stop here and continue the next day. Wanted to sleep later, it was now day 2. But there was a problem. In my infinite wisdom, I decided not to go to bed when everyone else did. I in fact decided to spend the next 7 hours watching YouTube and reviewing my already recorded footage and writing this very script until about 5 AM. While I was very productive, I was very much aware that I would, as I put it to Matthew, suffer the consequences later. And that I would. All this led to was the others wanting to continue the next day, while I was still a literal brick lying in bed not caring about the going-ons of the world. So they all decided to continue later in the day, 10 minutes before I woke up, but by that point it was already too late, as some of us had gone out to do other things. So our lust for conquest had to be halted for just a little longer. Day 2. Now we were actually going to finish our quest. We had finally met up at around 4 PM to continue our playthrough. We decided to take the fight to Tomfoolery Corporation, the now strongest AI, and crucially, they were one of the 2 AIs that hadn't joined together in a federation after witnessing our collective bloodlust. This plan would not go forward, however, without Matthew almost accidentally invading the wrong alien empire. So Matthew redeployed his fleets to the correct border this time, and our invasion went ahead. Very quickly, however, we encountered a problem. Said problem took the form of one of Tomfoolery's fleets attacking Seku's home system. How exactly had it gotten there, you may ask? Well, Seku's home system was pretty well defended, with an enemy who would attack him having to go through a number of systems before they would be able to strike his capital. However, Seku had recently finished his precursor event chain, which spawned a new system close to his capital with a relic world in it. This system, by chance, had added a hyperlane from his capital to a nearby wormhole that Tomfoolery had access to. Seku, not being aware of that fact, had not positioned any fleets near the wormhole and very quickly paid the price for it. So, I had to help out a little. I split my fleets into 2 main groups, one that would keep attacking Tomfoolery territory and the other that would come to Seku's help so he doesn't lose any important planets or systems to them. This took a bit of time, it made the war more complicated than ideal, but given that it was still 4 players against a single AI with no allies, it didn't take long for us to emerge victorious. And you all know what that means. Tomfoolery was no more, and many more star systems had been claimed. But we weren't done. There were 2 more fish to fry. First, we were going for the easy one, which was the Mawia caretakers. A people of isolationalist tree people that don't really do much. But since we were on a quest for galactic conquest, their green border blob on our galaxy map could no longer be tolerated. And so they too found themselves in a Colossus-inducted Total War scenario. Now, having learned from the last time, this time we made sure to account for any wormholes that the Mawia might have access to, so we didn't have to conduct any more capital system rescue operations. So before we started the war, I made sure to explore and map out any wormhole my science ship had access to. Almost every wormhole my science ship had access to. In our planning, we had once again made a critical error, with the difference that this time not Seku, but Matthew got a good old spanking by a bunch of enemy fleets. They even managed to invade and seize a bunch of planets from him, which was particularly annoying because we couldn't just blow them up with the Colossus because, well, the planet would stop existing. And these ones were still needed. So after yet another unplanned rescue operation, we realized that our overall strategy had a couple holes in it. Now, this didn't save the Mawia from falling into the ashes of history, but it would certainly affect our approach for the next and last war of our Stellaris playthrough. By this point, there was still a fair amount of not-us on the galaxy map. And this was an issue. As mentioned before, all remaining AIs had banded together in a federation of their own, which means as soon as we declare war on one of them, we will be at war with the entire rest of the galaxy, which would somewhat complicate our logistics situation, as we would be fighting a war on 2 fronts, and we were also going to have to claim an enormous amount of territory without falling for the AI's sneak attacks once again. We were also put under a slight amount of time pressure because the year 2500 was coming somewhat close. When we started the game, we set 2500 as our victory year, which means once January 1st of that year rolls around, the strongest empire in the galaxy will officially win the game. You can keep playing past that, of course, but we really wanted to end our quest before that happened. The one thing that was helping us out was that all the AIs in the Federation we were about to fight were rather weak compared to the ones we had fought before, so we decided that we would all be focusing on some individual goals first, before then coming together and finishing off whatever was left together. Before our final battle would begin, however, I discovered that I was only 46,000 diplomatic weight away from counting as 50% of the entire galaxy's voting power. My dream of becoming the Senate may yet be achieved. Once that was done, however, we got down to business and declared our final war. Our new strategy was working pretty well. With our fleet spread out this far, fighting relatively weak enemies, you had an easy time of disposing of any hostile fleet formations and space stations, and fairly quickly, the war on the Eastern Front was over, with only a few planets left, waiting to be neutron swept by Seku's Colossus. Speaking of neutron sweep, I had begun using it too. Rather than completely destroying a planet like the World Cracker, the neutron sweep merely kills the planet's population, leaving a regular uncolonized habitable world behind for you to repurpose. Really, this is the only sensible choice for a world-ending weapon, but since I really didn't need the extra planets at this point, and because I find the explosion graphics prettier, I had not used it until now. Much to my friends' dismay, who eventually forced me to make the switch, as they didn't like me blowing up all the planets they were planning on colonizing. A couple years into the war, I was in the middle of neutron sweeping the Blog's core sector, while Matthew was creating some beautiful border gore out of the Earth custodianship. Seku and Sergio's fleets were also slowly coming to assist me in the environmentally friendly disposal of enemy civilian populations. Fast forward a couple more years, and the Blog, the strongest of the remaining AIs, finally fell. But that caused a problem. You see, the Blog were the overlords of two smaller AIs. These two empires, led by a hideous alien species named the Humans, had broken away from the Earth custodianship in a rebellion a while ago because they didn't like being some robot's organic pet, or biotrophy as the game puts it. Our problem was that once the Blog fell, those two empires immediately dropped out of the war, since they were not actually part of the Blog's federation but only joined because their overlord said so. So our final war turned out to actually not be the last war of our run, a theme that would sadly keep repeating. For now, we would have to keep fighting the Earth custodianship, which we did. Without all their former allies, they were not much of a challenge, and all their systems, including their home system, with one weird planet called Earth, had a meeting with our Colossi. But here comes the next problem. Because we had just been at war, even though it was technically only with their overlord, we couldn't declare war on the two remaining smaller human AIs for another 10 years or so. So we would have to be satisfied with an almost entirely claimed galaxy map for now. But I'm not gonna lie, it was already looking pretty nice. Not much happened in those 10 years, except for us rebuilding and reinforcing our fleets and repurposing some of the freshly reclaimed planets, so let's fast forward to 2479, the year where we would be able to declare our final war for the final time. Given that those two AIs survived this long by sheer random chance, you can probably guess how the war went. It was a quick and painless end to the AI-based life of our galaxy. And it was just 2485. There would be another 15 years before the game would officially come to an end. There wasn't really anything to do for us, except just waiting for the victory pop-up, so we sort of just sat there, thinking about our achievements. Was it all worth it? Was our hunger for violence and expansion really justified? Had we truly created a better world for all people? Or was it maybe all just fueled by a deep void in our souls hungering for more? It was a very fun time, until Sergio made a gross miscalculation. Sergio had one of his trademark tomato soup brain moments and somehow decided it would be a good time to start the Become the Crisis event chain of the Nemesis expansion. Once complete, he would have killed all living beings in the galaxy, including himself. But he could not have made that decision at a worse time. The rest of us were at the apex of our power. The victory year was right around the corner, and all of us were still in conquest mode. So, to show Sergio the concept of who fucks around shall find out, I took all my fleets, flew to his home planet, and blew it up. I was very much fed up with his shenanigans, and so were Matt and Seku, so slowly but steadily we dismantled his empire from within until eventually he too was destroyed. While all of this was going on, the year 2500 rolled around, and I officially won the game. Yay. But I couldn't really appreciate this in the middle of a war, so for the next 7 years we would still be occupied with ridding Sergio of his territory until finally it was done. Only 3 remained. We had conquered the entire galaxy. We had gone from small little shitty planet to galaxy-spanning superpower. We had faced struggles and bad luck, but eventually we succeeded in our plans. Dominance had finally been achieved. And with that, the video's done. It's the first time that I've made a video like this, and I don't know if I'm ever gonna make one like this again. I do it mostly for fun, so who knows what comes next. If you're still here, however, I would like to give you my gratitude. And as always, take good care of yourselves and each other.